Hello, everybody. This is Sarah. I am back with another episode, and this week we are going to talk about one of the biggest topics that people face with PMO. In fact, it's one of the acronyms, one of the letters. This one is masturbation. It was important to get into this subject right away. We will talk about pornography next week, but I believe that this subject really just needs a lot of time spent on it as well. In fact, I want to begin by sharing my story, not the complete one. You can listen to my complete story, though, another video on this channel. But more specifically, I wanted to talk about how when I was first getting started, a lot of people's PMO journey starts with them usually viewing pornography, which leads them to masturbation and orgasm next. However, there are a select few people that start with excessive masturbation first, and then they start watching pornography. And I am one of those people where I did not view pornography first. I started with masturbation, and then I got to pornography after that. So I wanted to clear that up in the beginning. Sometimes it is the opposite way around. It's not unheard of. Now, also to begin, I wanted to define, well, what exactly is masturbation? What is it? And I wanted to read to you all directly from Merriam-Webster's dictionary. So, masturbation. It is erotic stimulation, especially of one's own genital organs, commonly resulting in orgasm, and achieved by manual or other bodily contact exclusive of sexual intercourse, by instrumental manipulation, occasionally by sexual fantasies, or by various combinations of all of these agencies. Now, I know that's a mouthful. I hope you got all that. But I wanted to just highlight a few things before we move on. Number one, it said commonly resulting in orgasm. Now, why that part of the definition, why that's so important, is something that we're actually going to be getting into in a few weeks, and that's the term edging, where it sounds exactly, how it is, where people purposefully try to get as close to orgasm as possible, but they don't on purpose. But again, we're going to save edging for a whole other video. Another thing that you mentioned, that I read about here, is it said that it is done occasionally by sexual fantasies. And isn't that the truth, right? Because most of the time, and I know in my own experience, you can be looking at or reading pornography or whatever, sexually stimulates you, and your mind takes over next. So a lot of people, sometimes they get so black and white with these subjects and just say like, well, I wasn't doing this or I wasn't doing that. And it's like, come on, let's be honest with ourselves. Like, was there sexual fantasies going on in your head? More than likely. And, again, it said right at the end, it could be even a variation of all of those different things. It doesn't matter. But again, for this week, we are just focusing on masturbation itself. So, every single time that it's done, it is done by either by hand, stimulated the organs, but sometimes it's literally thrusting your body, your private parts into an object. Maybe it's a bed, maybe it's a rug, whatever. Pretty much it's whatever needs to be done to get yourself to orgasm. I've even had an instance where I didn't even directly touch my genitals. I touched around it, and I did it just enough, literally like in my pelvis or an area around it that I gave in to orgasm. Some people, you can play with different parts of the body, whatever. You can throw 1,000 different scenarios in there. The main point to remember with masturbation is what the end goal actually is. And if the end goal is you getting to orgasm. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. Does it really matter how you're doing it at that point? We've all heard the joke, right? About masturbation. Sometimes people see it as it's just, especially for boys, it's a way to satisfy their curiosity. It's a rite of passage. Sometimes it's even seen as a joke, right? It's seen as a punchline for some people. And what's ironic is, what are the type of people that punchline is used for? Usually it's a loser, it's a creep, right? So that's even a little funny, the way that they try to slide that in there. So here are the short-term effects now, not the long-term, just short-term effects of excessive masturbation. You might have fatigue and weakness, because if you think about it, you are exerting your energy. You are creating life force for males. I mean, even for females too, you are getting your body ready for that climax. But for men, you are generating that life-giving liquid inside of your body. You're doing it on purpose. And that takes energy out of you. That takes attention out of you. That takes mental capacity out of you. But more so, we're going to get a little into that later, but more so are the problems that are caused by way of social damage, mental damage, and emotional damage. Because think about what you are doing, whether you are male or female. You are trying to get dopamine, a rush of dopamine inside of your head. Now you are building it as you are self-pleasuring. You are building it. But eventually you are working your way to the climax ultimately. So short term, you start to develop cravings for dopamine. It's not completely there yet. We're going to get into that under the long-term effects. But also, more than likely, you are using it to either avoid stress, to deal with stress, or to work through your stress by self-pleasure. That's all you're doing. And if I think about the time that I wasted on it, I spent hours on it, whether I was edging or if I actually did go all the way to completion. You're also not really developing a sense of self-control either. Which is ironically great for relationships, is people that can work through it and work with their partner. But those who don't practice self-control, if they continually masturbate to completion, you aren't developing any self-control. You're giving in to your pleasures every single time. And that kind of leads me perfectly to the long-term effects, the bad long-term effects of masturbation. And these effects can even happen without pornography. Because maybe you're telling yourself that so far. Maybe you're saying, well, I don't watch pornography. I don't view pornography. So I'm fine. It's not a big deal. Think to yourself again, what is the main point of all of this, of PMO, is dopamine. The long-term effects is, as you are developing those cravings in the short term, you start eventually craving more and more and more of a rush, just like drugs, just like alcohol. It's different chemicals, mind you, but you are still developing that sense of longing for that chemical rush. So what's going to happen? Well, you're going to want to start increase your frequency. So maybe you're only doing it once a week, right? But then you start craving it multiple times a week. Then every single day. Then multiple times a day. It happened to me. And on top of that, we're going to get into pornography next week. But what starts to happen if you start to go down that road? Well, at first it's, I'm just going to watch it this one time. Okay, I'm just going to watch it once a month. Okay, once a week. Okay, every single day. And then on top of that, you will be craving more and more intense varieties of pornography. But again, we're going to get into that into next week's episode. Before we mentioned how this issue of masturbation affects you with your social skills, with your mental skills. Well, what starts to happen socially if you are only seeing people, even if it's people that you don't know, but even if you are starting to view people as sexual objects? Well, let's be honest, you won't care about people. You don't care about their life, their background, what they want sexually. You're only seeing them through lust, through eyes of lust, through cravings. That's it. So think of the twisted and distorted view that you are developing of other people, especially if it's people that you know as well. You've seen it on forums. Sad to say, sometimes people become so depraved, they start even looking at their own family members as sexual objects. Because you're so gone at that point. You are so gone. Also, socially, if we kind of keep on this track, one kind of problem that develops, and later on down the road, I'm going to have an entire video just dedicated on PMO and relationships. But because you are developing this issue of seeing people as objects, you are going to have a serious problem with serious relationships. I'm not talking about like one-night stands. I'm not talking about flirting or anything like that. I'm talking about how it affects if you want a serious partner or a spouse. You want to get married one day. Because I was one of those people. I thought to myself, well, I think of people who have problems with this as losers who can't even get women anyway. They can't have relationships anyway. I didn't have that problem. I didn't. I was able to flirt. I was able to get different women. I didn't have that problem. My problem started to come up once I had to start developing intimacy and deep emotional attachment. I didn't have it in me. I didn't have it in me at all. Your anxiety's going up. You're having a hard time socializing. You can't keep serious relationships. Eventually, even, I almost guarantee to say, even casual relationships, you're going to have a hard time starting to do that. And with intimacy now, let me just speak to the men for a second. When you become so focused on just the outcome, on just the orgasm, on just the climax, and you don't care about any other things, you are going to have problems. Because unlike men, women are not just solely physical beings in the bedroom, in sexual play. And I don't mean to over-sexualize this, but it's true. This happens. Women are much more focused on deep emotional connection, foreplay, intimacy. Men, we only want the end result. And because we already only want the end result, especially if you develop a PMO addiction, you are really going to try to speed things up in the bedroom. And as you can imagine, that is going to wreak havoc on your relationship. Before I wrap up on this subject, I wanted to kind of point out something interesting that I stumbled across. As I was doing research into masturbation, into edging, into relationships, into pornography, I would from time to time come across even health websites, even respected doctors or therapists that would have long explanations on benefits of masturbation. Right? They would say, oh yeah, you got to just do it every once in a while. Or, oh, if you are facing stress or a high pressure, or, oh, if you need like a little boost to the ego, go for it. They talk about even the stimulants in your brain, your chemicals. Oh, they'll help you relax. You'll be able to face your anxiety, which is ironic because I was not facing my anxiety. What I found to be beneficial, which of course way down the line when we start talking about how to break out of PMO, when I started learning how to deal with my problems in the first place, to face intense situations in my life head on, when I started coming up with plans, when I started gaining knowledge, learning from my problems, confronting my problems, I started dealing with stress so much better than when I was with PMO. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, But what I can speak from is my own personal experience with PMO, and I can almost guarantee you, do not go for that trap. Today we talked about masturbation. We talked about how it affects your brain, how it affects your chemicals, the short-term effects of masturbation, how it affects you. It starts giving you those dopamine cravings right off the bat. And then, of course, the long term. The more and more dopamine you chase after, your body will never have enough. You will continually chase it. You will develop anxiety. You will develop depression. You will have a hard hit on your goals in life. You'll have a hard hit on your relationships. And it just gets worse and worse and worse until you get to my example where I lost my marriage to it. You don't have to get there. Remember our mantra that we say on this channel, you are never too far gone. I want to thank you for listening if you've made it this far into this episode. Next week, we're going to be talking about pornography. We're going to define it. We're going to talk about different forms of it. And of course, the short-term and the long-term problems. I hope to hear from you all soon. And everybody that has listened in, whether it is our full-length episodes or if it's just the short videos, I appreciate your support so much. And I am literally just spreading this word out to just help one person even overcome their addiction. Which that is where all these videos are pointing towards you breaking out. I thank you all again. This is Sarah signing out.